Gabrielle Chavez, and this is
I'm Thomas.
Thomas C. Chavez. And we, with our community of Christ the Healer, United Church of Christ, have been working on this material for a number of years, and we're really excited to share it with the church folk. Because as we said before, we have two versions of this work. One is for all people of goodwill, of faith and human feeling, who want what Christians want, which is what we call the kingdom of heaven, heaven on earth. A world where people share, where no one is ill or without care and love, and everything that we pray for and work for as people of faith. So we can talk about this in terms of human developmental psychology and general human ideals, but we can talk about it in terms of carrying out the work that those of us who are followers of Christ have pledged to do. So that's the version we're giving you here. Let me review what we talked about last week. And then I'll turn things over to Thomas, because we're going to focus on the second of the three compasses. And you each have a little graphic of the general, what we call the triple compass map, which is what we did with Jesus' three realms of reality, or three fields of self and consciousness. Your mind and body and spirit are always in one of these three places in any given moment, and we change all the time. Jesus called these three places the realm of heaven, which we call grace. That's where we are fully expanded as human beings. And we know we're at one with God, we're at one with our fellow humans and the earth. That's the good place, where we hope we will end up when we drop our bodies. But as followers of Jesus, who came from heaven to earth and took on a human body, our opportunity is to, in these bodies, find a way to bring this heaven to earth. And that's what this work is pointing towards. The reason we have to do this work is we're not in heaven all the time on earth. You probably have noticed that. We spend most of our time as human beings in the other two fields of self and consciousness, or the other two compasses, to use our language. And those are the compass of, we call it getting along, and the compass of self-protection. To use Jesus' language, he talked about this world. This world, which in his colorful language was under the sway of the devil. This world, even though it's God's world that was created good, is bent or broken or damaged in some way, and the powers and principalities that are not in favor of the kingdom of heaven on earth are throwing their weight around. So this world, we translate that to the realm of getting along, because that describes the struggle to get along, to survive in a world which isn't a loving, supportive, beloved community where we all take care of each other and there's no hunger or thirst or pain or suffering or anything like that. Thomas is going to spend most of the rest of this session on what it means to try to get along in this world and how that distorts our greater human potential to be here in embodied grace. But we need to know it, because that's what our world thinks is real. Death and taxes. You've got to grow up. You have to leave the blessed childhood of joy, and for many children being taken care of and held, and get thrust out, kind of like being born again into a hostile environment, and sink or swim. Sink or swim. The swimmers are getting along in this world, to greater or lesser degree, with some of the aspects of their life, not so much with others. When we sink, when we stop trying to survive and struggle and earn our way and make it all work, we drop to the third level of self and consciousness. We call the realm of self-protection. Jesus called it hell, or you know it as hell on earth. Since it's not just, most of us don't believe that hell is something you face after you die as a realm of eternal punishment. It's something that's very real here in the world of struggle. So hell can be physical suffering. If you've ever had chronic pain, that's a very physical hell. It can be mental suffering. It can be emotional suffering. It can be social suffering. What we do as human beings when all the connections break and we act out the inner hell on earth as war and destruction of our planet. So unfortunately, that's the next thing. We have to talk about that, but we're going to talk about it in psychological terms, because we are individuals, and we experience ourselves as separate people when we're in these states of consciousness. So we experience in our bodies hell on earth in very characteristic physical, emotional ways. And we experience the struggle of getting along in those ways too. And we will end up this series by returning to the field of grace, embodied grace, and how we can live that out, and practices that will keep us more growing in grace. But now I'm going to turn things over to Thomas to explain the whole struggle to get along.
So I want to make one little addendum to what Gabriel said, is we're trying to get it. We're trying to survive in the field of consciousness that the compass of getting along maps. We're also trying to survive in the field of consciousness that the compass of self-protection maps. It's just we're doing a really bad job. So the basic condition that is mapped in the compass of getting along is a minor amount of tension in the body, in the mind, and in the emotional function. I'm a little bit tense. I'm a little tiny bit nervous. I am a little bit uncomfortable. I'm discomforted. Everything isn't perfect, and I'm trying to make it perfect. I'm trying to get things. I'm trying to make it. I'm scratching in the earth, trying to grow food. I'm being really careful with myself so that I can meet a woman and be, and be mated. I am doing things because that's what's necessary. And it is actually the realm of pain. Not very intense pain, but constant pain. This world. And how I'm doing this and why I'm doing this is because I believe absolutely in what my physical senses tell me. And that is that I ended my skin. And that if I don't take care of this, nothing else, no one else will take care of it, and it will die. I am living in the consciousness that arises with the creation of the cell. What is a cell? But a little bit of soup with a very particular kinds of molecular organization floating in water with a skin around it saying, this is me and the rest of the soup is you. Self and other. But self all importantly, because when that little skin breaks, I just return to the soup. I ain't. And so this is important. And so the pain of attending to that importance is my life, because I am separated. I am one thing. And this, for the human being, develops somewhere around 15 months. We call it psychological birth. So I'm born, I go through a whole big ordeal to get born. Gabriel last week talked about what that was like. We'll never feel as much nerve signal, as many jabs up the nerves to the brain saying, ouch. We'll never again feel that much without dying. It's a big deal. And the first thing that I have to do after being born is I have to be nuzzling around looking for the breast and looking for eye contact with mother. And I know many of you are old enough to have been told and believe even that babies are born blind. Well, actually that's not at all true. American babies for most of the 20th century were born blind because we put silver nitrate in their eyes and burnt the surface of the eye off. And they told this cute little story that babies just are born blind to sort of make that okay. The reason why we did that, of course, was because there was an epidemic of syphilis, and babies were made blind by being born of a syphilitic mother. And so they come out and they didn't try to find out what was going on. They would just put silver nitrate over the eye and burn away the eye surface and any bacteria. So babies are not born blind. They're born able to look for their mother's eye and make contact and create bonding, and that bonding reestablishes the sense of oneness that was absolutely basic and unquestioned in the womb. There's nothing but me, and I'm floating, and everything's taken care of. And eat, I don't eat. Everything's taken care of, you know. Breathe, I don't breathe. Everything's taken care of. And at the psychological level, the bonding that occurs immediately after birth is a continuation of that. And there I am, laying there, you know, as I'm getting used to being alive in the real world, and I can, you know, I came out of the womb being able to get my thumb in my mouth. Well, now I can get my foot in my mouth. I can turn over and get my head up and move around, and pretty soon I'm really getting control of myself. Pretty soon I'll have control of the important parts, which is the, you know, the big smiling face and the source of milk. Okay? That's the important. And around, you know, maybe 15 months, I have a revelation. That's not me. I'm ripped in two. This is a horrendous psychological experience, to be ripped in two and left with only the little piece, the not important piece. I am now vulnerable and dependent. And I got to do something. I've got to do something, because that's not me, and maybe it will go away, or throw me out a window, or something. And so we all experience this shock, and we comment on it, but we don't have language. The very, very first thing that is underneath language is posture, orientation, and attitude. We comment to ourselves by how we feel in our bodies, how we move the body, how we flinch. That is our first, quote, language, unquote. And we keep it all the way through. Posture, orientation, and attitude is a language that all of us continue to speak all of our lives, even though we may learn to speak French and English and German and Japanese, or any other specialty. But how the body comments to itself is always there. So the very, very first flinch of this kind, the flinch at the birth of personal psychology, actually is the little tiny grain of sand we're talking a metaphor here. The little grain of sand that goes into the oyster around which a pearl is made. And the human pearl, out of that particular grain of sand, is the particular human personality. Gabriel's mother has a little saying about growing older. I mean, people mostly don't grow wiser, they grow more so. Well, we've been growing more so since this birth of psychological self. That's where we start. That's where our personality structure starts. And the compass of getting along maps 8 groupings. Okay. There are infinite numbers of potential human personalities, but they can be, it's 8 things are enough to give us a map of what's going on. And it's 8 because of the body. Because it literally comes out of how the body moves to talk to itself. The body-mind. So, here we are. I'm out of paradise. I'm in the world. And I've got to do something. To be biblical about it, in the story of Adam and Eve being kicked out into the world, they were told, you will earn your bread with the sweat of your brow. Well, that's the realm of getting along. I earn my bread by the sweat of my brow. And it is out of believing what I see, feel, and hear. So, in getting along, when I am in getting along, when Gabrielle is in getting along, when you are in getting along, what we do is we do the one incredibly, incredibly valuable thing that human beings have as a tool, the basic human tool. So we tell stories. We call these stories, when we get highfalutin, we call them philosophy and psychology and science and jurisprudence and detection and diagnosis. But if you take all of those things down to the basic what they are, I go, oh, these are the this I got, and I put them together by saying this goes with this, that goes with this, and that means that. That's telling a story. That's all it is. And it's fabulous. It's extraordinary. We have made everything that we are out of our storytelling ability. And it's always still a story. But when I am getting along, I tell a story for the benefit of me about you. Or you. Or maybe you over there. But it's for me. But I tell the story about you because if I can figure out how to please you, how to be nice to you, how to make myself useful or indispensable to you, you'll be nice to me. Okay? Getting along. Can't you get along? Well, I'm telling the story about you, but the benefit is for me. And it works, and it works, and it works, and then it doesn't. And then it doesn't. And when it doesn't, I contract still further. Okay? More tension, more stress, more contraction in the physical body, and I start telling the story for the benefit of me, about me. What was me, right? Or, you're all against me. Or, you don't understand. First I'm trying to understand you. I understand you. I understand you. That's, how about a box of chocolates? And now, You don't understand. But it's that separation between me and you has gotten deeper and gotten to be a much louder gulf. And the gulf is so big psychologically in me that I start yelling at you as if you're way far away. And people go, ah, you're yelling at me. You hate me. And we have all these wonderful dynamics that we have spent so much of our civilization writing laws about and getting all upset about. But it's very, very, very simple. If I believe that it's all up to me and I must do something, and that if I fail, that I must try very, very hard against you who are attacking me. You're my enemy. We have our world, the world that we've all known. Now, when Jesus comes along and says, hey, the kingdom of heaven is just around the corner. Now is when the time, all you have to do is have a higher mind, right? Repent means raise your consciousness. Okay? It was a terrible, terrible disservice when it became grovel and be unhappy. It never meant that originally. It meant raise your sights, have a higher consciousness, and believe. Believe? Oh, well, okay, I believe there was a virgin birth. I believe it. No, that's not what he was saying. He was saying, get it in your bones. All you have to do is raise your consciousness and get it. Very simple message. We've done unbelievable things with it. Some really good and some not so good. But it's really fundamental. The kingdom of heaven is right around the corner. It is here. It is within you and among you. All you have to do is raise your consciousness and get it. What is it? What is it is that even though our senses do not actually lie to us, yes, there are a few feet between me and you, and yes, I'm a skin bag that's, sheathed here, and you are the same over there. We are still one. That oneness extends deeper and further than what our immediate senses tell us. And when I experience that, the tension goes away because I don't have to do anything. There are two very different and profoundly beautiful ways to look at Jesus' basic message. One is the kingdom of heaven, is when everybody takes care of everybody else. If everybody in the world looked out for every other human being in the world and just did that, we're all millionaires. As an economic program, if people would do it, it works perfect. The other message is, hey, that skin bag you're so concerned about and you don't want holes put in it? It ain't you. It's only a piece of what's here and now you, and you go on forever, and we're all one. We're all spirit with God. And that gets translated, and we will die, drop our bodies, and bask in the gaze of God, which is just fine. But bring them together. What if they're both true? What if they're both true at the same time, and that we are spiritually the children of God, brothers and sisters in an absolute, total family, And that, what if we loved each other? What stops us from loving each other? Looking out for ourselves. The realm of getting along is, self-interest, self-seeking. Because we gotta. What if I really get it, then I don't gotta?
So I think we have time to illustrate some of that early language in our own bodies. Last week we talked about the 8 states of grace: acceptance, gratitude, joy, and how they showed in your body. It's not in your papers because we want you to give us your attention. We don't have time in this short introduction to go through all 8 of them, but it's really useful to notice what your own body does when you're trying to get along, when you're in that consciousness. And remember, it's a consciousness based on, I'm alone, I have to connect, or I'm going to die. It's very basic, like that infant Thomas talked about. I'm losing the source of everything, so I have to bridge that gap through my own efforts. So even though we're grown-ups now, our efforts to connect with other people are very much informed by that anxiety and that pain of infancy, that early trauma. So some of the postures, and we can illustrate them, because we know our own characteristic 8 ones.
So when I'm in getting along,
yeah,
I'm trying to impress you. I'm a little boy, I'm still a little boy saying, pat me on the head. That's all I'm doing when I'm trying to get along. I start every conversation by inserting some useful bit of information. And the whole point of it is I'm trying to give you a gift of some wisdom, some information, some science, some something, so that you'll pat me on the head and say, aren't you smart?
And what's the posture in your body of trying to get along? Walk around a little bit. Has anyone seen this posture in themselves or anybody else? Kind of like a tank. And it might not be about, let me impress you with my knowledge. It might be,
I'm rich, I'm handsome.
Or your baseball cards. It's that person that approaches connection or relationships, tries to get along by first thing they do is notice me. And that's a posture. And it goes back to that. That's something that worked for him. So we all do all 8 of them. But there's one you're really good at.
There's one you start with. You always start your walk.
Yeah. And if that doesn't work, then you go into another one. But he got really good at this and expressed it in terms of his knowledge. And we're not criticizing getting along strategies. We're all survivors. We figured it out. But it's good to know yours, so you have one more choice, because this is all about we have choice. So mine is directly opposite his. Actually, in the more advanced material, we get into how knowing yours and knowing what's opposite you impacts what your relationships are like. And
wherever you go.
Yeah. But in mine, it's more like, what can I take care of? The anxious infant looking for, how can I please or comfort or satisfy my mother? And then it becomes the good little girl who does the nice things. It becomes the woman who gets to be good at executive management. But the posture, you see what my arms are doing? Have you ever seen an old person who, after a lifetime of trying to take care of everything, one more thing, I can never relax, there's just one more thing, can you get that? Okay, that's more so.
Now, this is really important, Gabrielle was so good at taking care of her mother that she found out that her mother didn't like crying babies. She almost never cried. Mother didn't like changing diapers. Guess what?
Constipation. So, also, when we distort our posture, our God-given human frames that stand on the earth in alignment on earth as it is in heaven, and are very grounded and very strong, actually become less physically present, because you can actually press down on someone's shoulders, go into your get along thing. And he's not really here, or he can press down on mine when I'm like this, and I just get smaller. But when you're fully present, pressed down, and you're aligned on earth as it is in heaven, you're solid. So this language of how you embody who you are is a health thing too. We'll show you a couple more. We like to look at public figures that one of our previous presidents, Abraham Lincoln, and our current president had the same strategy. It's called mutuality. These are people that get very good at connecting with others by finding a little bit of themselves in you and also in you, even if you're opposites. So you got like on the one hand and on the other hand. You've got a person who's like really good at being on your team and on your team too. And then who are they? Because they're always just instinctively going to, can we all work it out together? And again, this is not to criticize a getting along strategy, but to know, and we could be wrong about the president's, it's much more useful to find it in yourself.
And it's always about finding it in yourself.
We're all in this state of consciousness, if we're not in states of grace and unity and oneness and trust and faith and all the things we talk about in church, we're either struggling against the pain of separation to find a connection, however we do it, and maybe hold on to it, because one of the other strategies is really holding on to, if I got something good here, I need to be held, or just grasping it so much, and that impacts how you relate to other people. You know that, and you may have it in yourself. People who are very conservative, not politically, but emotionally, can't handle change because they found something to clamp onto, and that's the survival thing. These are all survival mechanisms when you peel off all the fancy dancing in the stories. They're just infants, toddlers, struggling to find a way in this world of feeling so alone. And it brings compassion to me for myself and for everyone else when I see this struggle unveiled and how we act it out and live it out in our relationships or lack of relationships.
We create most of our relationships at the level of getting along. And it's very, very poignant, actually, because at the level of getting along, you can actually take two people who don't know each other, and you can bring them into a room and you stand them next to each other, and once you really get this way of looking at the world, you can get them to stand next to each other and distract them so they're not thinking about anything, and if they have a specific relationship in terms of the compass, their bodies will just sort of lean towards each other. And if they have another relationship, their bodies will lean away.
And this is why you like some people and you don't know why, and you don't like other people, and it's not about content. It's simply about the different ways we position ourselves to survive. And some of the ways are more complementary and some of them are more off-putting. It's a fascinating study. We do not have time to unpack it for you. This is a teaser, a taster, an opening. You have the basic map. Just to notice in your own body, whether you're in acceptance, gratitude, joy, and how that feels and how that can set up the positive feedback cycle that we talked about last week. And to know that there are things you can engage in your life. Practices like prayer, like appreciating nature, like art, that bring you into these feelings of expanded states of grace. Lots of spiritual practices, and you can choose those. Or you can notice that you're kind of stressed, you're doing whatever it is that you do to make it at work or try to keep all the pieces together or control your life, struggling to get along. You can go, Jesus loves me. Maybe I don't have to try so hard. Maybe I can stop and smell the roses and say thanks and just be in a different state. And this is hard, and it's mostly hard to correct yourself when you're in the state of self-protection, which is
almost
the next
impossible
session. But you can notice when someone else is in self-protection. I went to the state penitentiary with this congregation when Sister Helen Prejean was visiting, and we went to the meeting of the people who were in death row, or the lifers. Not the death row, the lifers. And we did this whole series, and I only had 10 minutes. And I said, I'm going to show you something you already know. What you look like and feel like and how you behave when you're in any one of these three states. And I just showed her. This is how you were born. This is your birthright. Did you ever feel good? Did you ever feel love for everybody? Yeah, nodding, they're all in the blues, prison blues. Did you ever have to struggle and figure it out and, you know, see if you're going to be a winner or a loser? Yeah. And have you ever wanted to just kill somebody because you just were filled with, the world is against me, I got to get out of this, you know, I can't deal with it, and that's the postures of self-protection. Yeah. Okay. My message to you is, you know this, your body tells you where you're at, and you can choose.